Australian white wine is more than just Chardonnay, much more. Wine writer Jeremy Oliver says Australia's cool and warm climate regions produce an exciting selection of refreshing, crisp white wines.
For many people, Chardonnay is virtually synonymous with Australian white wine, and it's easy to see why. Its peachy, melon, citrusy aromas, its generous, juicy flavours, its round texture, soft acids make it very, very approachable and very easy to enjoy. But not many people are aware that Australia does have a very large collection of very serious world-class Chardonnays. These wines are made with traditional, time-honoured techniques such as barrel fermentation and are suited to long-term cellaring as well as for early enjoyment. It might surprise many of you who are tasting for the very first time, but Australian Riesling always has been, is and probably always will be bone dry. It has an amazingly alluring fragrance of lemon, lime, occasionally apple and pear, and the long, vibrant, racy palate that finishes with really zesty and refreshing austerity. These wines are fantastic to drink in their youth, perhaps in their first year or two after being bottled. But then, if you give them a chance, they develop lovely toasty, butter and honeyed complexity with bottle age. If you're looking for a really flavoursome and refreshing white wine to be drinking throughout the summer, why not consider Australian Sauvignon Blanc? It has a lightly grassy, herbaceous aroma of gooseberries, passion fruit, and lychees, and a round, juicy, generous palate finished with refreshingly clean acids. My tip is, however, when you buy a bottle, drink it before it gets too old while it's still at its most refreshing and lively. Think Semillon, and most Australians think the Hunter Valley, the very famous wine area in New South Wales, whose Semillons begin life quite lean and tight, but before developing the honeyed and toasty complexity for which they're very famous. However, in the west of the country, and indeed in some of the cooler regions in South Australia and Victoria, Semillon acquires some of the more grassy and melon-like flavours that you might be more familiar with in varieties like Sauvignon Blanc. In fact, it's often blended with Sauvignon Blanc to make some of Australia's best known and loved classic dry white wine styles. However, my challenge to you is to find a bottle of straight varietal Australian Semillon and match that with your very, very favourite seafood dish and see what happens. For the better part of nearly 2 centuries, Australian white wine has reflected a huge amount of innovation and willingness to experiment. We've had varieties like Marsanne and Roussanne planted here for a very long time indeed. In more recent years, they've been joined by varieties like Viognier, Pinot Gris, or Pinot Grigio as it's also known, Verdelho, and Traminer has been planted here also for many, many a decade. So why don't you open your mind to the diversity of Australian white wine?